Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? Bum 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 bum. You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true with the red, white, and blue, where there's never a boast or brag. And should old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the grand old flag. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. God bless America and the home of the brave.
Hello, my name is Alfredo Austin, and you just finished listening to my group Freedom's Boombox. Over the years, my group has had the pleasure of traveling all around the globe through U.S. State Department programs such as American Music Abroad. As cultural ambassadors, we've seen firsthand the impact that America's global leaders have overseas. The stories you'll hear tonight are truly making the world a better, safer place. So, we are extremely humbled and honored to help the USGLC nationwide community celebrate 25 years of making this world a better, safer place. So please, sit back, relax, grab yourself a drink, and enjoy the show.
From Wisconsin,
Washington State,
Minnesota,
from Kansas,
from Colorado,
Illinois,
from Ohio,
from the great state of Alabama,
from Iowa,
from Arizona. Congratulations to USGLC on 25 years.
25 years. 25 years.
25 fantastic and essential years.
So congrats.
From Missouri.
From Oklahoma.
from New Mexico,
from North Carolina, a place where veterans know that threats facing the U.S. cannot be solved by military power alone.
Veterans like me have seen firsthand.
We need exceptional development and diplomacy to help bring them all home safely.
Y que felicidades, USGLC.
Congrats, USGLC.
From the state of Indiana, the crossroads of America. But we know that Indiana is truly the crossroads of the world.
From the Commonwealth of Kentucky, the birthplace of bourbon. Cheers.
Trade makes our economy thrive.
Helping to bring jobs right here in Tennessee.
Nevada.
Beautiful Maine.
Texas.
Pennsylvania.
Nebraska.
South Carolina.
Virginia.
We all know here in Florida that 20% of our jobs come from international trade.
So congrats, USGLC.
On 25 fantastic years.
Working to build a better, safer, and healthier world together.
Good evening, America, and welcome to USGLC's 25th anniversary tribute celebration. I'm Liz Schreier, President and CEO of the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition, and I'm kvelling. Well, that's Yiddish for bursting with pride. How fun was it to see a glimpse of the tens of thousands of faces that make up the USGLC? From Main Street USA, veterans, farmers and students, businesses, nonprofits and faith leaders, Democrats, Republicans and independents. We're all tuned in to help celebrate 25 years of bipartisan support for America's global leadership. When I think back to those early days, when a small group of us sat around a table, worried, very worried. There were big challenges in the world, yet some of our fellow citizens thought America should turn inward. But we spoke out, we organized, knowing America must remain a force for good in the world. And here we are, what some people call our Strange Bedfellows Coalition. In fact, if anyone had told me 25 years ago that we would celebrate this year with Elton John, an actress who played Madam Secretary, and one of the world's most famous chefs, all here to honor Dr. Tony Fauci and heads of UNICEF and the World Food Program, who just won the Nobel Peace Prize, all while welcoming thousands of people into my home because we're living through a global pandemic, well, I would have said that's crazy. But here we are in the midst of a global pandemic, the ultimate reminder that what happens globally matters locally. I know you all join me as all of our hearts and prayers go out to those that are impacted. Yet tonight, as we mark World AIDS Day, it should lift our spirits that there truly is something to celebrate. Our collective efforts saving millions of lives, the generosity and ingenuity when America partners with others, the impact to make the world a better and safer place. And tonight we also celebrate 3 extraordinary individuals, each of whom has made a remarkable imprint on our world. And as you will hear this evening, we will also celebrate the lasting achievements America has made in the fight against HIV/AIDS, but also against poverty, hunger, and conflict around the world. This work has been led by countless champions in Congress, a rare space where Democrats and Republicans actually come together, and we salute them all. As we look ahead, even in the midst of a global pandemic, I'm ever the optimist and hopeful for the future, and here's why. Over the past 2 weeks, I have had one of the greatest honors of my career, interviewing 7 cabinet secretaries, including Secretary George Shultz, who will turn 100 later this month. Each of them is a member of the USGLC, and I am filled with so many memories of our work together, where not only have they helped lift up our cause, but helped America to shine on the global stage. Ladies and gentlemen, let's listen to the wise words of the secretaries.
Well, first of all, I never believed that I would be Secretary of State.
My first reaction was, with all of those kids out there fighting and dying and doing their duty, how can I not do mine if the president thinks I can help?
Henry Kissinger and I are really good friends, and he invited me to come and speak somewhere, and he introduced me and he said, "So Madeline, welcome to the fraternity." And I said, "Henry, it's not a fraternity anymore."
I was sworn in under a portrait of Benjamin Franklin. And I was being sworn in, it occurred to me to uphold a constitution that once counted my ancestors as 3/5 of a man. And I was being sworn in by a Jewish woman Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so my first thought was, what would old Ben have thought of this? It just said wonders to me about how far our country had come.
I was quite nervous about going into the State Department for the first time, but when I walked through those front doors and I was met by a huge throng of Foreign Service officers and civil service officers and staff, I have to say it just lifted me up and energized me for the work ahead.
Representing this country is one of the great honors of my life.
After World War I and after World War II, in both cases, the world was in chaos. After World War I, we looked it over and walked away. But then after we looked back after the end of World War II, with people like Truman and Atchison and Marshall, and they said to themselves, what a crummy world. And then they said, we're part of it, whether we like it or not. And they set out to see if we couldn't produce something better.
George Marshall has always been a great model of mine. Just imagine what we saw back in the late 1940s. Those who were our enemies were about to become our friends. We're about to become democracies.
And when you look at America, that the greatest generation created coming home from that war, the most prosperous, safest country in history, There's the proof in the pudding right there.
The genius of those who designed America's engagement with the world after World War II was that they saw that it was also in our interest to be involved in the world.
America needs to be at every table where decisions are being discussed and made that either directly affect us or indirectly. And in this interconnected world in which we find ourselves, I would argue that most decisions end up affecting us.
You don't have to be a genius in order to understand that you can't deal with climate change alone, or a pandemic alone, or nuclear proliferation alone.
America always has to be there. And when we step away, guess what? Somebody else with less responsibility or standing than we have would take our place.
The challenge is really, how do you exercise international leadership without becoming global policemen? And the answer is, you have to strengthen the non-military instruments of power.
And keep our diplomats foremost. Keep them out in front on foreign policy.
Not the U.S. telling people what to do, it's the U.S. leading the building of a consensus.
Many senior flag rank officers from our military would echo my view of the importance of the civilian role that is played in our national security policy.
What I love about USGLC is that it actually leverages what is really the strength of America, which is that it's done by stakeholders and civil society groups and
business, of academia, of all parts of American society that have an interest in what's going on in our world and the role that America plays or should play in the world.
We are a democracy where you have to have the people committed to a course as well.
It's a force multiplier, frankly.
That's our responsibility now.
Sooner or later, those of us who have been a part of this fight for a while are going to pass from the scene, and somebody has to be there to take up that challenge and that mantle. Start now.
Young people need to remember, even if they want to ignore the rest of the world will not ignore them. And whether it's in their jobs or in their lives more broadly, we have to be engaged in the world.
So I have the greatest hope in the young generation, and I think they are prepared to deal with the challenges of the 21st century.
You are the future, and we placed it in your hands. Do well.
Never lose sight of the fact that our fundamental power comes from our power of inspiration.
It positions us better, it leverages our assets better, if we are a leading voice and force for development as well as diplomacy and defense.
America is at its best when it leads from principle as well as power, when it leads with its values and its compassion.
We are the most powerful country in the world. We have more riches and resources than any other country in the world, and have had it that way for many, many decades now. And so when we see problems around the world, we see nations that are in trouble, we're America. We reach out to people. We've done it over and over again because that's who we are.
David Beasley runs the World Food Program, the UN's emergency first responder to prevent famine.
We have a cure for starvation. We have a cure, and it's called food, but we need the money because our people are dedicated to doing the job and getting it out there and saving lives. And they do that because they believe in helping people. And that's what life is all about, loving your neighbor.
Your heart will be the building block that will inspire each of us to end hunger around the world.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Cousins, President and CEO of the United Nations Foundation, and what a wonderful occasion to come together this evening. Even if we're virtual, and even if this year's celebration is a little different than in years past. The UN Foundation has been a proud member of the USGLC since almost the very beginning, and we are thrilled to wish you a very happy 25th anniversary. This year, we have all been starkly reminded why U.S. global leadership and alliances are so vitally important. We face a pandemic that can only be defeated working in partnership with others, and we need the same unity of effort to avoid backsliding on critical progress already made on health, gender equality, education, climate, and so much more. U.S. leadership in and full funding of the United Nations is imperative, And I can't think of a better example of why we should invest in the UN than the World Food Program and its remarkable leader, David Beasley, whom I'm proud to introduce as our first honoree of the evening. The World Food Program is the world's largest humanitarian organization, addressing hunger and promoting food security globally. In 2019, WFP assisted close to 100 million people in 88 countries, and today their services are needed more than ever as the world faces an alarming rise in hunger due to conflict, climate shocks, and economic downturns. Since his appointment in 2017, David has ably led the organization through some of the worst humanitarian crises it has ever seen, and that was before the coronavirus. When COVID-19 disrupted the world as we know it, the World Food Program went into overdrive. In partnership with the World Health Organization, its emergency response planning and its impressive logistics and supply chains ensured that millions of people around the world continued to get the life-saving assistance they need. Under David's leadership, the agency was awarded the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize for its efforts to combat hunger and improve conditions for peace in conflict-affected areas. Before we hear from David, I want to turn the floor over to another friend, founder of World Central Kitchen and partner chef to the UN Foundation's Clean Cooking Alliance, Jose Andres, who knows firsthand the role food can play in uniting and reshaping lives.
Hello everyone, Chef Jose Andres here. It's great to be here with the US Global Leadership Coalition to recognize the World Food Program and David Beasley, the passionate leader of the world's largest humanitarian organization combating hunger and poverty around the globe. In my work with my nonprofit World Central Kitchen, I've had the opportunity to be on the ground leading food relief efforts following devastating natural disasters. And also, I had the honor and privilege to be next to the men and women of World Food Program, seeing the amazing work they do in places like Mozambique and very much every other hotspot around the world. I know the importance of a plate of food. It's more than just nutrients and calories. It's a sign that we care, that we are here for you, for them, and that tomorrow things will be a little bit better. Like David, I believe that food security, peace, and stability go together. In the face of famine and a global pandemic, hunger remains a threat to so many. But thanks to the leadership of the World Food Program and countless local partners working together to feed the world, more and more families have food on their table and can hope for safer communities and a better tomorrow. Director Beasley, we thank you for your commitment to those in need and for answering the call to public service. People like you is what makes people like them, the new generations, to keep working hard and where a plate of food is the beginning of a better tomorrow. Director Beasley, again, my respects to you.
Well, congratulations, Governor, on the USGLC honor, and of course, the ultimate recognition for you and the entire World Food Program team, the Nobel Peace Prize. It is so thrilling and so well-deserved. So I want to start, what did you think when you got the word that the World Food Program had won the Nobel Peace Prize?
I mean, you have to understand number one, the context that I was in that day, but it really wouldn't have mattered because if you get that call, it's like, it doesn't matter where you are, right? But on this day, I was in the middle of Niger and I had been out in the field and I'd just come back into the city with this mindset, meeting with the president and the leaders, talking through these issues. And in the middle of the meeting, somebody just bust in which I'm like, I can't believe somebody busted in our meeting. And they said, Nobel Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize. And I was like, who won it? Who won it? Well, the World Food Program did. You did. We did. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was literally, wow. I literally was speechless for the first time in my life. And
And honestly, I think, and I've talked to the Nobel Peace Prize Committee since then, and I think, number one, they were honoring the women and the men that put their lives on the line every day around the world.
One of the things I was really struck by is what you just started to talk about, the why. They said, quote, it's your contribution for acting as this driving force in efforts to prevent the use of hunger as a weapon of war and conflict. And David, this is so significant. And I want you to talk about the perspective of how World Food Program does its work in tackling global hunger in these really challenging places of war and conflict.
Well, we are in the most difficult places around the world, and where there's war and conflict is where we are. And war and conflict and destabilization today is different than it was 50, 60 years ago. Those traditional methods of war. Now it's just, you've got hostile groups, you got ISIS, you got Al-Qaeda, you got Boko Haram, you got Al-Shabaab. Then you've got war like in Yemen, which is very complex, and in Syria, it's extremely difficult. But having said that, our teams out there, they get it done. And we use food in a lot of villages to reconcile warring factions. We use food as a weapon of peace in so many different ways.
One thing that you've talked about a lot is that for over a decade, the world had much to celebrate in the fight to reduce hunger. I just saw your new report for 2021 and described it as even bleaker. So give us an update. What is the current status of those suffering from not just hunger, but perhaps starvation? And what are you predicting for the year ahead?
So late last year, I was predicting that 2020 was going to be a catastrophic year, worst humanitarian crisis since World War II, and I would lay out the parameters and why. And leaders would be baffled because, there's so many issues that everyone else has been working on. And then when I lay it out, they're like, oh my gosh, we haven't thought about that. Well, then Desert Locust came, and then COVID came on top of that. So now, and this is the bad news. So the number of people marching toward the brink of starvation now, we anticipate, based on the COVID economic ripple effect, will be from 135 million to 270 million people. Now, the good news is leaders around the world responded. And so we've been able to avert famine for 2020. But all we really have done is told it, deferred it to 2021. And we're looking at less money and double the needs. We already have several countries that the famine door is being knocked upon, like Yemen, Burkina Faso, South Sudan, Afghanistan, DRC. And so 2021 is going to be horrific.
All right, well, let's start talking about some of the solutions, and I want to break this down in a couple different ways. You often talk about hunger as it relates to national security, but I've also heard you talk about how hunger, food scarcity, relates to climate policy. How important is it that leaders come together to address climate challenges? And let's get to solutions. What are some of the opportunities that we could do together to find solutions around this?
I tell a lot of my friends on the left and the right, I said, look, you can debate all day long what's caused it to change. But I tell you one thing you can't debate, that it's changing. I'm out there. I'm in these countries. And I'm not talking about the more cyclones and hurricanes and things like that. But if there's more flash flooding, more droughts, these people cannot wait till there's a global solution for climate change. They are reaping the repercussions and the consequences right now. They've got to survive. My goal, you've heard me say this, is to put the World Food Program out of business. But with the climate changing taking place out there, we've got solutions on the ground to help people survive. We really do. And how do we take advantage of better fertilizers and better seeds for using less water and less carbon footprint, so to speak? But anyway, I could go.
I don't think you're enthusiastic enough, but you are the ultimate optimist. And every time I hear you speak, I love it because you believe we can save lives, and you can put World Food Program out of business because you have the solutions. But one of the things I know you're worried about is if we have the resources to get this done. And I know currently you're concerned that there's a danger that the funding will have a shortfall, both on the public side and the private side. Can the food program meet the moment?
You know, we're at a major crossroads in world history right now. 2021, we could be facing an extraordinary number of deaths. Already this year, you've had about 1.3 million people die from COVID. We've already had about 8 million die from starvation. And next year, that could be double, triple, quadruple if we don't handle this thing right. I mean, this year, our funding was a little over $8 billion. And the United States has really stepped up. Others have begun to step up more, like Germany. But other countries need to do more. And next year, our needs are going to be $15 billion. And here's what happens if we don't have the money. You're going to have famine, starvation. You'll have destabilization. You'll have mass migration. The world's in trouble. And let's show the world we care for the poor, the needy, those that are vulnerable, those that are suffering. Wait. I want to add one thing. You and I have talked about this before. You know, the Republicans and Democrats in Washington, they seem to be fighting on everything. But when it comes to international food aid and our program, it's like they lay down their guns and their, the vitriolic texting and all that kind of stuff, and they come together. It's an amazing thing to see, as I call it, the miracle on Pennsylvania Avenue, with both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue actually come together on this issue. So, Liz, thank you for helping us. Thank you for honoring us. Thank you. We've got a lot more work to do, and together we can end hunger and give the children a brighter future. So thank you.
We are so proud to be able to thank you and the team at World Food Program for all you do to make the world a better, a safer place. Governor David Beasley, we're so proud of working with you and partnering with you. Congratulations.
A massive generation of young people are about to inherit our world.
In my travels, I have the great honor and delight to hear and meet with young people all over the world.
And they're calling out for a fighting chance to build a better world. So their call should be our calling, the calling of our time. The need is urgent, and 1.8 billion young people are waiting.
Good evening. I'm Sally Sussman, Executive Vice President and Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at Pfizer. It's an honor to be part of tonight's celebration, to pay tribute to this fantastic group of honorees, and to celebrate World AIDS Day with this incredible community. Pfizer is proud to be a member of the USGLC Board of Directors and to represent the voice of the private sector this evening. Like so many businesses right now, we at Pfizer are committed to doing our part. Our purpose, day in and day out, is to create breakthroughs that change patients' lives. And in this complex landscape, we hope it's our medicines, vaccines, financial commitments, and partnerships that will help to strengthen health systems and to improve access to care for patients all around the world. I'm delighted to join this celebration and to pay tribute to a leader deeply committed to the power and inspiration of American global leadership to fight poverty and disease, drive innovation, and lift people up all around the globe. Henrietta Fore has spent more than 3 decades promoting global development before becoming UNICEF's executive director. She is now leading UNICEF through perhaps its most critical time in its history, as COVID-19 has upended the lives of families all around the world. UNICEF has responded to ensure that the children are safe and learning. As part of the COVAX facility, and as the largest single vaccine buyer in the world, UNICEF is leading efforts to procure and supply COVID-19 vaccines. That's in addition to supplying more than 2 billion doses of vaccines for routine immunizations in more than 100 countries each and every year. Pandemic or none, UNICEF is giving children hope for the future. And UNICEF's success is Henrietta Fore's success. Before we hear from the honoree herself, I'd like to turn it over to Tia Leone, who has a special message.
Hi, I'm Tia Leone, and I'm honored to join in this celebration with U.S. Global Leadership Coalition for a special night honoring an incredible leader, Henrietta Fore. From the beginning, UNICEF has been guided by the strength, inspiration, and leadership of some extraordinary and frankly badass women. Henrietta continues the legacies of UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador Audrey Hepburn, who brought attention to the suffering of children around the world, and my very own badass grandmother, Helenka Pantaleone, who served UNICEF USA for over 25 years. Henrietta is also a grandmother, but she's not your grandmother's humanitarian, far from it. She is the driving force behind a global organization that is without a doubt the most effective, the most innovative, and the most relentless defender of children's rights on the planet. The right to education, clean water, protection, healthcare. UNICEF works to deliver a fair shot at life for every child. And under Henrietta's leadership, UNICEF is the organization that's going to distribute COVID vaccines to hundreds of millions of people worldwide by any and every means necessary, from donkeys to drones, because that's what UNICEF does every day. This has been a devastating year for the children around the globe, and Henrietta has met the challenges of 2020 with fierceness and tenacity. And our country has elected its first ever female vice president. I'm excited to see what kind of a nation we can build from here, because I've already seen what strong women have done for UNICEF, and they never give up. Thank you, Henrietta Fore. The power of women is not just apparent, it's working, it's proven, and it's life-changing. And thank you to everyone watching tonight and the work you do to make the world a better place.
So Henrietta, welcome. This is truly a privilege for USGLC to honor you tonight for your extraordinary career and impact in leadership. I want you to know that from the moment we announced you as a 2020 honoree, the outpouring of excitement and warmth and respect for you, literally from all over the country, came pouring in. Everyone is a Henrietta fan. So we're thrilled to have you.
Well, Liz, thank you. That's really wonderful. Well, I'm a big GLC fan.
So I have so many questions. I want to start where your passion comes from. You've had an extraordinary career, and I want to talk about it, but I want to start with where you're leading, your incredible work heading UNICEF. And I recently watched your TED Talk, and I loved what you said. You said, quote, young people are 25% of our population, but they're 100% of our future. They're calling out for a fighting chance to build a better world. Their call should be our calling. So Henrietta, start by talking about your journey of how you're bringing your life's work and experience to this moment to help protect and empower the world's children.
Well, thank you, Liz. When you work in a place like UNICEF, you think you had left your childhood behind, but you haven't. You come to full face to your childhood. And all of the things that shaped you now come to mind. So if I were to ask you, who is the one person who has changed your life, you would probably talk about a parent or a brother or sister or a teacher. And it's true for most of us. We are indelibly shaped by those around us. And as a result, we have a real chance with children and young people to spend some time with them, to invest in the future, and to make the world a better place. And so it's really been fun to be at UNICEF because you realize that you can help change the world and shape it in the decades to come if we can get it right.
That's incredible. Well, let's talk about COVID a little. The global pandemic has shaken our world, and including, I know, your day-to-day work. And seeing the progress to improve the lives of children globally has really been impacted. And I've been reading some of the work you're doing on nutrition, education, mental health. UNICEF and the Gates Foundation have warned that the vaccine delivery for the world's children have dropped to levels not seen since the 1990s. In July, I saw you warned we can't trade one health crisis for another. So can you talk a little bit about what the pandemic has meant to children around the world and how UNICEF, in addition to what you just said, has had to deal with these multiple crises going on all at the same time?
So there's the simple truth that children are the most affected in times of crisis. And that is now true in COVID-19. And it's something that we as a world often overlook. But if you look at vaccines, that's a good example that you bring up. Immunization rates for routine immunizations, this is for measles and preventable childhood diseases and polio. But all of these vaccination rates have fallen way off. But as a result, we are very worried that we're going to lose more children to preventable diseases like measles than we will to COVID-19.
Early in your tenure at UNICEF, you launched what you called the Generation Unlimited Initiative, this idea to rally the world to get every young person in school, training, or age-appropriate employment by 2030. What are the steps to get there? And I'm curious, are we meeting young people where they are?
We realize that our world often spent much more time on younger children, the first decade of life, and we know many of the solutions to help children at that age. And so Generation Unlimited is a big public-private partnership. We are set on trying to reach every young person in the world. The demographics are there are 1.8 billion in this age group. Right now, it's the largest number that the world has seen. And by 2030, it's going to grow even larger. So if we want the world to be better, we better focus on this generation and get them some help and some opportunities to do what they want, which is a modern education and some occupational skills so they can make a livelihood, a living for themselves and their families.
Well, this is exactly why we're so excited to honor you tonight, to lift up your voice, and because everywhere you go, every role you've had, you are not just a beacon of hope, but you have this tenacity for results that is just inspiring. And I've seen it everywhere you are and following you at UNICEF, watching your impact. So maybe just to close, can you share any story from your travels, from your journey, that speaks to you about this hope, where you know we are on the right track in fighting for the world's children?
Liz, I've got to go to girls. So when I was in Lebanon, we went to a gathering of Girls Got IT. So these are girls who are studying how to use a number of IT systems. So whether it's software or hardware, and how they might use it to become architects or engineers, or what they might do as an interior designer or an artist, but it would all be online. They were so excited. They wanted to become everything, and they have mentors. So older, often women, but sometimes men, who are there to work with them, to show them what it would be like if they worked, let's say, in an architect's office and they were designing apartments around a park and what that would mean. And so it's called Girls Got IT, or Girls Got It. And they are so excited. They have hopes and dreams, and they want to change the world, and they're going to.
Well, I'm with you, and I'll follow you anywhere. And I know why the outpouring from our network was excited that we're honoring with you. Thank you, Henrietta Fore, for all that you do. Congratulations. We're so proud to be able to lift you up.
Thank you, Liz. And it's my great honor to accept this award. So thank you very, very much.
Congratulations.
We've got the whole world in our hands.
We got the whole wide world in our hands.
Guys, you're not on mute, but I think you're onto something.
As co-chairs of the USGLC, we are proud to work together.
For 25 years, working to build a better, safer world.
Bringing together unlikely allies.
Or as some have called us, strange bedfellows, although I don't know what is so strange about us.
Me neither. We're from the business community.
And NGOs and the faith community.
We're Democrats and Republicans and veterans.
Hey folks, your globe turned into a snowball by the time it got to Minnesota. But we're Democrats, Republicans, and community leaders.
And mayors from around the country.
Together, with all of your voices, we have sent a clear message. America's engagement in the world is not only the right thing to do, but the smart thing to do.
But we haven't done it alone. The real heroes are our friends and champions on Capitol Hill.
Lately, it feels like our country is more divided than ever, but not when it comes to championing diplomacy and development.
Democrats and Republicans in Congress have come together for decades, passing extraordinary policy to create a much more stable world.
Tonight, we salute not one individual, but look back on decades of success and honor the incredible contributions of all of our bipartisan congressional champions over the past 25 years.
And all these people truly have the whole world in their hands.
Do you think the system is just broken?
Washington simply cannot get its act together.
American people are generous. That America gives far more in foreign aid than any other country in the world is a testament to our generosity.
The overwhelming majority of funds go to an agenda on which we can all agree.
It is our mutual interest to promote peace and to promote stability.
What we're trying to accomplish here is to memorialize this in legislation. So this just not one administration's idea, it becomes the United States government's standing commitment.
Increasingly, I think our society has become more and more divided on a lot of issues, but in the development and diplomacy area, there's actually been a lot of bipartisan support.
From the reservoir of precedent that has been established, there's a certain obligation for those of us who are trying to take up the mantle. Good traditions need to be maintained, and this is one that's an unadulterated good.
Congressional leadership is so important, reaching out and playing a huge role in foreign affairs over the past 20, 25 years.
There's bipartisan agreement that foreign aid is so important to many of our constituencies.
You know, I've been on the Foreign Affairs Committee for 24 years, and it is the most bipartisan committee in Congress.
In fact, we have a saying on the Foreign Affairs Committee that partisanship stops at the water's edge.
If you're going to have legislation that is long-term for this nation, it has to be bipartisan and it has to be bicameral. And we had some great Democratic colleagues and strong support with the BUILD Act that created the DFC and Adam Smith.
I worked with President George Bush, and we worked with Republicans, Henry Hyde, and others to bring bipartisan consensus to pass and get signed into law.
Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin and I were doing regular battle, but we partnered together during that time on legislation.
I've been to places where I never thought I would go. Members of Congress who participate, and usually they're bipartisan, really come back with an awareness that we did not have before we went.
And to see the world through the eyes of those outside the United States who are eager for our leadership and engagement, who rely on us and who trust us.
The United States must remain a leader in terms of democracy, freedom, and human rights.
Members of Congress on both sides of the aisle understand this, which is why we have consistently acted to work together.
I'm excited to speak on behalf of H.R. 5105, the BUILD Act.
The Paul Simon Water for the World Act.
The Women's Entrepreneurship and Economic Empowerment Act.
Electrify Africa Act.
Today I rise to support the Girls Count Act.
The African Growth and Opportunity Act.
The Global Health Innovation Act.
I'm very proud that we're about to take our final step on the Global Food Security Act.
And we did it together.
We don't agree on every issue. We disagree on a lot of issues, but it's about
missions, about getting things done.
Some of the biggest advocates for this investment are our military.
It is a tiny fraction of what we spend every year, and you get a lot more bang for the buck than having to send in the military.
And to cut back our diplomatic activities at this time would be irresponsible.
The single most important argument for this investment is that we have a responsibility to help those who have been left behind.
Success at home also depends on our leadership in the world. It is our willingness to shape world events for the better that has kept us safe, increased our prosperity, preserved our liberty, and transformed human history.
This country's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Dr. Fauci.
Dr. Anthony Fauci.
The nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
He's a nonpartisan career professional who's been in his job since 1984 and was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He was one of the principal architects of the PEPFAR, a program that has saved millions of lives throughout the developing world.
In my job, through vaccines, through therapies, and through public health measures, is to safeguard the health, the safety, and the welfare of the American public.
Dr. Fauci, you've been my hero from the beginning of the AIDS epidemic until the present day. We've gone through a lot of public health crises and controversies together, but there has been no time in the history of our country where courage and candor have been more important than they are today. Thank you so much for your leadership. It's not just leadership in the United States, it's global leadership, and we are incredibly grateful. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Elton John, and I'm so pleased to join you today at the US Global Leadership's Coalition's virtual celebration. What a wonderful and fitting way to mark World AIDS Day by honoring one of the biggest champions in the history of the AIDS epidemic, Dr. Anthony Fauci. There are very few people on this planet who have dedicated themselves to a lifetime of service to save millions of lives like Dr. Fauci. His unwavering commitment to public health and innovation has transformed the approach to HIV. And it is his leadership and persistence that will ultimately help us to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic. I founded the Elton John AIDS Foundation 28 years ago to protect, test, and treat the most vulnerable people affected by HIV. And through my foundation, I've had the pleasure of advocating alongside some of the greatest minds, politicians, scientists, and influential leaders. And not many can top the progressive changes made in the USA for people living with HIV than Dr. Fauci. This is a man who is responsible for embracing activists and people living with HIV and incorporating their views to change drug trials back in the early days. He expanded research and treatment and saved countless lives. We met years ago at an AIDS conference, and I applaud and admire the continued leadership and devotion to this fight. Together, we will end the AIDS epidemic. So, Dr. Fauci, we thank you. Congratulations on this wonderful honor, and God bless.
Good evening, Dr. Fauci. I am so thrilled to be with you tonight. Thanks so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us.
Well, I thank you, Barbara. It's really great to see you.
Well, I know we are all so grateful for you, and there is no one more deserving this year, of course, of USGLC's Lifetime Achievement Award than you. And I know from my father's work with you and my own work in global health, your contributions span generations, and we are all so grateful for your leadership. I still remember the 2003 State of the Union when PEPFAR was launched. And what many people may not know is that before that, you were sent on a secret mission to Africa by my father, President Bush, to investigate whether PEPFAR was even possible. I'd love for you to tell us that story.
Thank you, Barbara. Yes, it's a story that really is a testimony to the extraordinary vision of your dad. You know, at that time, it was actually the spring of 2002. I got a call from Josh Bolton to go down to the White House and chat a bit And the bottom line of it all, to make a long story short, he said, you know, I want you to go to Africa. We have this drug, nevirapine. Why don't you go to Africa and see if we can do something with the Africans? What is feasible? So I went to Africa, walked around, looked around, spoke to people. We said, let's see if we could put together this program. So we put together a $500 million program to prevent mother-to-child transmission. And I got all excited about it. I came back to the White House, and your dad had me present it to a group of the cabinet. And as I was getting ready to walk out of the room, he called Josh and I aside, and he said, Tony, that's really good, but we want to do something really bigger than this. And I said, well, how big? He said, I'm not sure. I want you to go back and figure it out. Here's exactly what he told me, his exact words. And this is not made up. It was right out of his mouth. The thing that he says often, he says, you know, Tony, we as a rich country have a moral obligation. That's the word he used. That as a rich country, we should not have things that other people will be dying of because of where they were born. And for the rest of the year, literally, it was months, Barbara. It was not like an over the weekend. And then right around the Christmas holidays, things started to pep up again. There was a lot of activity from the White House. I got a call from Josh saying, what are you doing? I want you to come down to the White House for a while because we want to talk about some words in the State of the Union address. And that's when I said, oh my God, he's bought it. He's going to do it. And that's how it happened. We went down and I worked with Mike Gerson to put together some words that were precisely accurate in the State of the Union address, which he gave in January 28th, 2003. And the other thing that he did, you used the word secret. The one thing he told me, he said, don't tell anybody what you're doing. I don't want the press to know. I don't want anybody to know because they'll get in the way. Let's do it. And then we'll embrace them and bring them in. And that's exactly what happened. Because after it was done, everybody was saying this was the most phenomenal idea around. And he was right.
Oh, that gives me goosebumps. I love it. I think your moral courage is so spectacular to bring moral imagination, moral courage back into this. And of course, obviously, history is still being written, but I'm wondering if you can tell us about the impacts from PEPFAR now that you may never have dreamed of when you were hatching this with Mark and my dad.
Oh, actually, the impact is extraordinary. And it's the gift that keeps giving, I think, Barbara, really, because not only was the immediate impact of getting so many people on therapy. Right now, there are like 25.2 million people receiving antiretroviral therapy. The vast majority of that, directly or indirectly, were involved with PEPFAR, but it created a system. So it had cascading effects because we linked well beyond after my involvement with things like HPV and cervical cancer and breast cancer and measles immunization. It sort of created an entire system that you could keep building on. And it's such an extraordinary model. And whenever I talk years later, you know, with subsequent administrations and subsequent Congresses of what could be done and can be done and has been done with an extraordinary idea that has a mission and a goal and a lot of energy into it. So, I mean, it set a standard that I think the world is going to follow for decades to come.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that's such a great lesson for who we're with tonight. Folks part of USGLC that are part of these big tent coalitions that are so critical to advancing really smart and impactful initiatives. It's obviously World AIDS Day today. And so while we're currently in a setback in global health progress with COVID spreading around the world, we've also seen so much change and so much positive impact in global health because of your work in AIDS. And you mentioned the initial plan of working with mother-to-child transmission. And I'm wondering, do you think we'll see an AIDS-free generation in your lifetime, and how will we get there?
You know, Barbara, I really do. I mean, I'm known obviously as a realist, but also as an optimist. And I believe that as we continue the strong commitment. That has got to stay. You can't take your eye off the ball. But as the years go by, even the tools that we get are better and better. This COVID thing, good news, we have a couple of really good vaccines. Recently, were just actually shown, and there are going to be more vaccines. It's a terrible ordeal. But when COVID essentially becomes the rear view mirror, HIV is still going to be there. And that's the thing that we have to do. We have to keep our eye on that. The end game of ending this is to me, we're going to get there, and we're going to get there while I'm still around, I can tell you.
I wish we were all in person so we could celebrate you the way that you deserve and give you as many standing ovations as we can possibly fit in. I'm curious, as you look back at an incredible and impactful career, what have been your proudest moments so far?
Wow, yeah, that's a great question, Barbara. I think probably the first early years of HIV, when we were really in the trenches with no tools, and it was just practicing medicine. We had so many sick people with nothing but, as I say, bandages on hemorrhages. We started getting drugs. Really was a combination of intensive motivation of me to try and do something beyond just what we're doing every day. The next is, after I became director, was to put together an HIV/AIDS program that many people were against. They thought it was a distraction from other diseases. The people that didn't appreciate the ultimate magnitude of what this was going to be. And then the third thing has to be PEPFAR. You do a lot of research, you write a lot of papers, people recognize you for it. And then when you look back in your life, the millions of lives that have been saved, was sort of the end game of, if I hadn't taken care of patients 39 years ago, if I hadn't become director of the Institute, if I hadn't done this, then I might not ever have met your dad. And it kind of all culminated at that point when all of a sudden we came together at the same time and the same place. A person with a vision to have a global impact. So those are the kind of things that, when I get a chance to take a deep breath and think about that, make me the most proud.
Absolutely. So incredible. You have chosen to work in a very tough business. And I'm wondering, we're living in a tough year this year, and yet you've always been an optimist. And what message of hope do you want to leave with us tonight that keeps you in the fight?
Barbara, I think a message that comes to mind is when you are dealing and are also in some respects responsible for the health and the safety and the lives of people. It's a privilege that I've been given on the basis of the position I am. Being down and discouraged is absolutely not an option. I mean, it isn't even in the consideration, no matter how tough things get. And I've just sort of burned that into my DNA, that there's no way, when you have so many people suffering throughout the world, so many things that can be done, to kind of drop back and say, I'm tired or I'm feeling sorry for myself, is just not in the picture. So to me, it's just focus like a laser beam on what you need to do and do it. And that's really what drives me.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Fauci. Thank you for your moral audacity. Thank you for being a caretaker of millions of people, and for providing the inspiration that we all need in seeing progress and serving others. I am so grateful for your lifetime of this work. I know everyone joining tonight is as well, and there is no one more deserving of the USGLC's Lifetime Achievement Award. So thank you for gracing us with your presence.
Thank you so much, Barbara. It's really a privilege and a pleasure, as always, to be with you. And please send my love to your dad.
Absolutely.
See, what did I tell you? The work that we're doing together truly does make a difference. It reminds me of a time when my group went to Madagascar while on an American Music Abroad tour. And we came across these incredible young people. They were so inspiring. We wrote a song about how we felt, the unity that we felt, the love that we felt, and you'll hear that song tonight. We hope it brings you joy. We hope it gives you the energy to keep going, to keep fighting the good fight, and to know that we're all in this together. So without further ado, we present to you Sing Love.
Sing love, love, sing love, love. Together we'll stand as one, and sing love, sing love. In this world, so much is going on. Seems like nobody can get along. And the fighting's only getting worse. We must figure out how to make things work. Every night I get on my knees and pray that tomorrow will be a better day. So many nights I sit up awake, thinking how we can make this world a better place. Yes, we must love one another, support and lift up each other. Love one another, support every sister and brother. Together we'll stand as one, and sing love, and sing love, sing love, sing love. Together we'll stand as one, sing love, and sing love. Together we must take a stand, to fight the hate hand in hand. There is so much strength in unity. The prejudice must stop so we can live in harmony. Yes, we must love one another, support and lift up each other. Love one another, support every sister and brother. Together we'll stand as one, and sing love, and sing love. Let's sing love, sing love. Together we'll stand as one, and sing love, sing love. Let's sing love, sing love. Together we'll stand as one, and sing love, and sing love.
Wow, what a night. I want to thank first our co-chairs, Elizabeth Cousins, Julie Gerberding, Sally Sussman, and a special thank you to our sponsors, our board of directors, our advisory committees, and advocates from across the country, friends from Capitol Hill and the executive branch over the years, and hundreds of professionals that have been part of Team USGLC. I raise a toast to all who have been such a meaningful part of this journey, and to those that have joined us for this inspiring evening. You know, it's a powerful reminder of what we can accomplish when we join together around what unites us rather than what divides us. And tonight, it's really simple. Our common pursuit to build a better, safer world. So from the USGLC, thank you for joining us, and good night.
Sing love, sing love, together we'll stand as one, and sing love, sing love. world so much is going on. Seems like nobody can get along. And the fighting's only getting worse. We must figure out how to make things work. Every night I get on my knees and pray that tomorrow will be a better day. So many nights I sit up awake, thinking how we can make this world a better place. Yes, we must love one another, support and lift up each other. Love one another, support every sister and brother. Together we'll stand as one, and sing love, and sing love.